Good day, my name is Christel from Frans de Klerk Independent Technical Analyst. Mpo wanted us to look at the Euro-Norwegian kroner currency pair. And Mpo, we can clearly see, like almost in the case of the rand against the dollar, there is an inverse cup and handle formation. And that normally tells us and implies, and I want to draw this massive cup and multiple handles that are currently visible, and it looks like it's even working on a third handle, implies that the krone can probably strengthen against the euro. One, if that red line, the 40-week moving average, changes into a resistance, and that is waiting at 10 krone 82, and then obviously the next strong support is waiting at 10.45. That means below 10.45, we can assume that the krone will continue to strengthen against the euro. However, there's also obviously lower highs visible, as every rally is a little bit lower than the previous rallies. And I want to draw in this resistance line and highlight that once the krone starts to consolidate above this resistance line, waiting at 10.95, we can assume a weaker krone against the euro. Take note, my stochastic is not completely overbought yet. It's sitting on a 72, which means and also implies that as long as that 40-week moving average, because take note of that long tail at the bottom of my candle, and remember these are weekly graphs, implies that they were definitely protecting a stronger krone. They were buying euros, selling krone to make sure that the krone weakens further against the euro. Above 10.95, we can assume more weakness. I would be nervous to enter at these levels. And remember, these are a weekly graph. I'm not sure if you're a trader, then I suggest you rather look at daily graphs. And then the next lower high will obviously be confirmed there below 10.79. And that is very closely to where that 40-week moving average is waiting. And then obviously have a look and see what it does when it reaches 10.45. Rashad asked an interesting question. He asked about property in South Africa. And Rashad, there's two indices that I want to highlight tonight. And the one is the J253, that's the Real Estate Investment Trust Index. And I also want to just show you the SA Property Listed Index, which is the J253 index. So they almost look exactly the same. So I'm going to stick with the J253 index. And we can see clearly, and remember these are a basket, the index shows you a basket of all the SA property listed shares. And have a look at what is included in there. But what I want to show you from a technical perspective is that there is a head and shoulder formation visible. But should the head and shoulder be wiped off the table, in other words, this index starts to consolidate above at least the left shoulder, waiting at 260. The right shoulder is too low, 232, so you can't use that. If it continues to support this low base, waiting at 211, and it starts to gain momentum and it goes back to that strong resistance around, and I'm going to give you that exact level, 304. We might also be sitting here with a double bottom formation. But then this index, the J253, needs to start to gain momentum. It needs to find buyers, and it needs to take it back to this resistance level. Because we know, one, head and shoulder formations are warning patterns, but double bottoms are turnaround patterns for more upside. Also take note, there's a window there, and that is a nice target for some upside, and that is waiting at 317.71, and the gap starts at 310.35. A gap is a window. Also on a candle graph, we refer to them as windows. On bar charts, you refer to them as gaps. But it's a target that one can aim for should the momentum to the top continue. Why? Because the rules around windows are they always get closed. It can take days, months, weeks, decades. But whether it's a fundamental window or an emotional one, at some stage it always gets closed. Especially on a weekly graph, because the window weighs a lot heavier on a weekly graph than it does on a daily. So the first sign of resistance, or the first level of resistance that needs to be overcome, is waiting there at 230.82. And obviously, as I said, that support at 211 must remain. And then very critical, that red line, the 40-week moving average, needs to start to change into a support, and that is waiting at 269.62. Above the 40-week moving average, the long-term sentiment towards this index will change to positive. And Rashad, I'm going to zoom out because I want to take you back here to 2018, where clearly for 4 consecutive weeks, this index could not change the 40-week moving average into a support and couldn't keep it one. And ever since then, it just retraced. It tested it again back in Feb 2019, retraced, tried to test it again there in July 2019, could not change it into a support. And that was a critical level for long-term investors to take note of, because one, there was lower highs every time, and it just for three periods, it just could not change that 40-week into a support. And that was very, very negative. I mean, ever since then, the property index is in a bear market. So maybe that will give you an indication. Keep an eye on it. And then below this index, highlight the individual shares that you are keen to start to nibble on them. Africa wanted us to look at Nampak. Africa, I want to go back to a line graph because I think it's a lot more clearer on the line graph. But there's one thing that has started to happen on Nampak, and I think many of us were very grateful for that, and that is volume. For years, we have waited for volume on Nampak. And it started the first week, the 14th of September, again the 28th of September, and a spike in volume alongside a consolidation and higher lows implies that the sellers have dried up and that the buyers have started to protect the share. There was a clear falling wedge formation. Now, a falling wedge is a positive formation. Why? Because if that upper band starts to change into a support, and that weighted around 93 cents, it hints that the buyers are strong enough to take and change that previous resistance into a support. It will be seen as very positive should Nampak, after this retracement, find support at a level higher than that upper band or on top of that upper band. And when it starts to gain momentum and changes this previous resistance of R1.31 into a support again, my next higher low will be confirmed, and that will be seen as very positive for Nampak. I will be concerned, and you can use a stop loss if you're currently long on Nampak, or a protection level if you're an investor at about 84 cents, because that's where that upper band is waiting for Nampak. But a spike in volume alongside with higher levels implies protection. My stochastic is in no man's land. I mean, it's broken downwards. It tells us obviously the selling pressure is there, but I mean, this share have been beaten for years, and maybe this falling wedge is a turnaround for higher levels on Nampak. Rue wanted us to look at City Lodge, also a share beaten to pieces, and I want to go back to a candle graph because we can clearly see that every bounce takes the share a little bit higher, and that implies loss of momentum and lower highs, and that is seen as negative route. So from a technical perspective, also a relatively thin share. Let's go back to volume. Yes, there was volume, so that implies, or that gives us an indication that should the share price starts to rise from here, along with that spike in volume, we can assume that the sellers are drying up and that the buyers are left. Because remember, no matter how profitable or unprofitable a company might seem on paper, it's only more buyers that can drive the share price to higher levels. So from a technical perspective, we have to look at previous resistance levels and wait for the shares to start to change that into a support. And the first one is waiting there around R3.36. Take note, your stochastic is nicely oversold, but your two lines within the stochastic is still pointing downwards. You should wait for the divergence. You should wait for the two lines to start to break upwards, especially the blue line, which is the K line. That is the shorter moving average within the indicator. When that starts to break upwards and you've got confirmation of a positive divergence, that will be your indication that the share price might continue to rise for higher levels. So that first strong resistance that needs to be overcome is waiting there. I'll give you that exact level, R3.30. Above R3.30, we can assume that the next higher low on City Lodge is in place, but below R2.51, the graph will be a concern again, because then I will have lower highs. Next strong resistance, and you can use the shadows or the real bodies, is waiting at 3.79 and then going for it. Also take note, your 40-week moving average, a critical level that needs to change into a support. Time and time again, like in the previous example, it tested it for 2 weeks, could not change it into support, plummeted. Tested it, plummeted. And there is a nice window on a City Lodge that is waiting between 6 Rand 86 and 7 Rand 16. A nice gap that one can aim for some upside on City Lodge. So let's hope that lower band weight remains a support, because then a small double bottom might confirm a possible turnaround for City Lodge here, especially with that spike in volume. Don't forget to send us your questions for next week's show. Have a fantastic week. Take care.